People rarely fear what is loud. They fear what they can't read. Some reputations aren't built by announcements, attention, or performance. They form quietly, behind closed conversations and lowered voices. Yours didn't come from trying to impress anyone. It came from what people noticed when you stopped explaining yourself, stopped reacting on cue, and stopped playing roles that benefited everyone but you. That's when the whisper started. Not praise, not admiration, something closer to caution. Here's a fact most people never hear until it's too late. Studies in behavioral psychology show that the individuals who influence outcomes the most in any group are rarely the most vocal or charismatic. They're the ones who observe longer, speak less, and intervene at precise moments. In other words, the room is often shaped by the person who looks like they're doing nothing. That detail alone makes a lot of past situations suddenly make sense. People are comfortable with visible intelligence, the quick answers, the loud confidence, the show. What unsettles them is strategic intelligence, the kind that notices patterns, incentives, and timing, the kind that doesn't rush to prove itself. When someone realizes you're not reacting emotionally, not oversharing, and not scrambling for validation, their instinct changes. They start adjusting their behavior around you, and they don't even know why. There's a strange moment when people sense this shift. Conversations become more careful, jokes get tested before being delivered. Suddenly everyone is just thinking out loud. It's almost funny how quickly confidence turns into caution when someone realizes they're being quietly read instead of blindly believed. This isn't about being intimidating. It's about being unmistakably aware. And awareness, when paired with restraint, has a way of unsettling people who rely on chaos, noise, or manipulation to stay in control. This is the space where the whisper lives. Not because you announced anything, but because people noticed you didn't need to. Number one, you understand systems, not people, and that's why people misjudge you. Most people think intelligence shows up in conversation. Quick replies, emotional awareness, knowing what to say at the right moment. That's the kind of intelligence that feels familiar and comfortable. Yours works differently. You don't focus on personalities. You focus on patterns. You don't study moods, you study structures. You notice how incentives shape behavior, how rules quietly control outcomes, and how power actually moves when nobody is announcing it. Because of that, people often think you're distant, slow, or uninterested. They assume you're missing something social when in reality you're seeing something structural, while others are reacting to what someone said. You're paying attention to why they said it, what they gain from it, and what usually follows next. You're not cold, you're zoomed out. This is why people walk into situations confident they've figured you out. They mistake your silence for ignorance and your calm for passivity. Meanwhile, you're mapping the situation in your head. Who decides what? Who benefits from chaos? Who needs approval? Who pretends to have power but doesn't? Once you see the system, the people inside it become predictable, without you needing to read their emotions at all. You also don't rush to correct anyone's assumptions. You've learned that systems reveal themselves over time. People expose their own patterns if you let them talk long enough. So instead of performing intelligence, you let others underestimate you. Not as a tactic, but because proving yourself early usually ruins the advantage of understanding how things really work. This is where the misjudgment becomes permanent. People assume intelligence must look like confidence, dominance, or constant contribution. Yours looks like restraint. It looks like patience. It looks like someone who isn't impressed by surface-level dynamics, because you've already seen how the machine runs underneath. And when the moment comes to act, You don't improvise. You don't panic. You simply apply pressure at the right point and let the system do the work for you. That's when people feel blindsided. Not because you changed, but because they never realized what you were paying attention to in the first place. You were never trying to read people, you were reading the game. And that difference is why they never saw you coming. Number 2, you don't argue to win, you argue to expose weak thinking. Most people argue for applause, dominance, or emotional release. They want to sound right, feel right, and be seen as right. That's never been your goal. When you step into a disagreement, you're not chasing victory points or trying to embarrass anyone. You're testing ideas. You're pressing on logic to see where it bends, where it breaks, and where it was never solid to begin with. This is why your arguments feel unsettling instead of dramatic. You don't raise your voice. You don't stack insults. You ask simple questions that force clarity. And that's where the discomfort starts. Because weak thinking collapses fast when it has to explain itself without shortcuts, emotion, or borrowed confidence. People don't feel attacked by you. They feel exposed by their own reasoning. You also don't rush to counter every statement. You let people talk. You let them commit to their ideas fully, not out of politeness, but because half-formed thoughts reveal themselves if given enough space. By the time you respond, you're not reacting. You're responding to the entire structure of what was said, not just the loudest part of it. What frustrates people is that you're not emotionally invested in being right. If someone makes a strong point, you acknowledge it. If an idea survives pressure, you respect it. That alone disarms people who came into the argument expecting ego, not evaluation. They realize you're not playing the usual game where pride is on the line. This is also why people stop arguing with you over time. Not because you dominate, but because arguing with you requires effort. You don't let sloppy logic slide. You don't reward exaggeration. You don't respond to volume. You respond to clarity. And for people used to winning debates through confidence or noise, that's exhausting. You're not trying to change minds on the spot. You're planting doubt where certainty was lazy. You're creating a pause after the conversation ends, when people replay what they said and realize it didn't hold up as well as they thought. That's the real impact of how you argue. You don't leave arguments feeling powerful. You leave them thinking. And for many people, that's far more uncomfortable than losing. Number 3, you delay reactions because you're calculating consequences. Most people react instantly. They get offended, excited, defensive, or competitive the moment something lands in front of them. Immediate reactions feel human, relatable, and in control, but they also make people predictable, impulsive, and frankly, easy to outmaneuver. You operate differently. You've learned to pause, not because you're hesitant or uncertain, but because you're already running scenarios in your head. You're measuring outcomes, weighing costs, and deciding the exact moment and method to respond. That pause can feel strange to others. They might misinterpret it as disinterest, weakness, or overconfidence. In reality, it's the opposite. Every fraction of a second you wait isn't wasted, it's invested. You're calculating the ripple effects of every choice before committing. While someone else is lashing out or reacting emotionally, you're already several steps ahead, imagining how each move will change the dynamics, who will notice, and who will act next. This is why your responses land differently. When you finally speak or act, it carries weight, clarity, and precision. People feel it almost subconsciously. They sense that your moves aren't impulsive, that they weren't thrown together in the heat of the moment. They sense intention, and intention is far more unsettling than immediate force, because it signals control, patience, and understanding that goes deeper than surface emotions. You also understand that time exposes truth. Immediate reactions often escalate conflict or reveal more about your vulnerabilities than necessary. By delaying, you let others reveal themselves, their motives, and their limits. You turn patience into a tool for observation and leverage, not avoidance. Ultimately, your delayed reactions aren't about waiting to prove a point or holding back anger. They're about preserving advantage. They make you unreadable in a room full of people who rush to act. They create a subtle tension, a sense that whatever comes next isn't random. It's deliberate. And when people finally see it, they realize that everything you do has been thought out long before anyone else even noticed the moment existed. Number 4, you see leverage where others see emotion. Most people navigate life reacting to feelings, anger, excitement, fear, pride, jealousy. They respond to emotional cues and let moods shape decisions. That's why so many choices feel chaotic, impulsive, or easily manipulated. You operate differently. You've learned to look past the emotion and see the mechanics beneath it. Where someone else sees frustration, you see opportunity. Where someone sees excitement, you see timing. Where someone sees vulnerability, you see leverage. This ability isn't about being manipulative or heartless. It's about understanding what actually drives behavior. People think influence comes from charm, persuasion, or shouting the loudest. Influence, in reality, comes from noticing what motivates people at their core and then acting in alignment with those forces. You don't get distracted by theatrics, posturing, or panic. You notice patterns, calculate pressure points, and act only where impact is highest. Because of this, people often underestimate you. They mistake your calm, composed demeanor for passivity or lack of engagement. They fail to see that your silence is never random, it's observation. Your restraint is never weakness, it's strategy. By the time they realize what's happening, the dynamics have already shifted in subtle ways. You don't need to shout or force an outcome. The system moves because you understand the hidden gears that drive it. This vision extends beyond individual interactions. You recognize how incentives, status, and perception shape entire groups, organizations, and networks. You can anticipate decisions, predict reactions, and prepare contingencies without anyone noticing. While others get entangled in drama, you are quietly steering results, nudging situations in ways that appear natural, but are carefully orchestrated. Understanding leverage over emotion also gives you freedom. You're not tied to outcomes dictated by feelings. You can act with clarity, maintain composure under pressure, and make choices that others would consider risky or counterintuitive. That ability alone makes you unpredictable. And unpredictability, when paired with insight, is far more unsettling than raw emotion. You don't chase control, you design it. And most people never even realize how subtly they've been moved. Number 5, you don't overshare because information is currency to you. Most people talk too much. They fill silence with stories, opinions, and details that rarely matter, thinking that being vocal equals influence or connection. You understand the exact opposite. You know that every word, every revelation, every personal detail carries weight, and once it leaves your mouth, it's no longer yours. Information is currency, and you spend it only when it gives you leverage, insight, or advantage. That's why you choose your words carefully. You don't overshare because you recognize the hidden cost of exposure. People often misinterpret your silence as shyness, mystery, or disinterest. They assume you're uninvolved or unaware. In reality, you're calculating. You're observing how others respond, what they reveal in their own words, and where gaps exist in understanding or strategy. By holding back, you create a natural filter. Only those worth engaging with earn access to what you actually know or are willing to disclose. This selective sharing doesn't make you cold, it makes you strategically untouchable. This approach also makes people uncomfortable without your effort. They sense that you're not easily swayed, not impulsive, and not driven by the need for approval. They speak freely around you, not realizing that their oversharing is painting a map you can read effortlessly. While they trade opinions, emotions, and assumptions as if they are trivial, you're quietly gathering insight. You never have to press or pry. People provide the data themselves. The power of withholding information isn't passive. It shapes interactions and outcomes. By not revealing everything, you set the terms of engagement. You dictate what matters in the conversation, what others can act on, and what remains unknowable. That subtle control goes unnoticed until it's too late. You don't overshare because you understand that the less you give away, the more you gain. Every word saved strengthens your position, sharpens your observation, and deepens your understanding. While the world rushes to display knowledge, you quietly let it accumulate where it counts, and that makes you not just intelligent, but dangerously perceptive. Number 6, you adapt faster than people realize, but you don't announce it. Change makes most people uncomfortable. It forces them to rethink, to adjust, to question their assumptions. That's why many struggle when circumstances shift. They cling to what's familiar even when it no longer works. You operate differently. Adaptation isn't a reaction for you, it's a strategy. You see the currents before others notice, and you move with them quietly, efficiently, and without fanfare. By the time people realize the landscape has shifted, you're already ahead, comfortably positioned while they scramble to catch up. This ability to adapt without announcing it gives you a unique form of invisibility. People underestimate you because your evolution isn't dramatic or performative. You don't broadcast your new skills, strategies, or insights. You simply apply them where they matter. This creates a gap between perception and reality. Others think they understand the rules, the boundaries, the players, but the rules have already changed under your radar. That subtlety is disarming. It's not about tricking anyone, it's about efficiency. You don't waste energy proving anything, and that itself makes people nervous. Your quiet adaptability also allows you to observe the consequences of change in real time. While others are panicking or overreacting, you're analyzing patterns, testing outcomes, and refining your approach. You adjust faster not because you're impulsive, but because you've internalized the principle that survival and advantage belong to those who evolve before necessity forces them to. This makes you both resilient and proactive in a way most people fail to anticipate. And there's another layer to this. People often mistake consistency for stagnation. They see your calm presence and assume you are fixed, predictable, or unmovable. The truth is the opposite. You are fluid, flexible, and deliberate. You bend, you pivot, and you rise without spectacle. That makes your moves almost imperceptible until the moment they hit impact. You adapt faster than people realize because you're not adapting for approval, recognition, or attention. You adapt because you understand life, systems, and people don't wait for anyone to catch up. And in that quiet, unseen movement lies your most dangerous advantage. Number 7, you can respect someone and still outgrow them without apology. Respect isn't synonymous with dependence. Most people confuse admiration with obligation, loyalty with surrender, and courtesy with restriction. You operate differently. You can recognize someone's value, learn from their wisdom, and acknowledge their accomplishments, and still outgrow the space they occupy in your life. That doesn't make you disrespectful or cold. It makes you aware of your own trajectory. You understand that growth isn't always linear, and that relationships are not always permanent. The world tends to mistake this kind of clarity for betrayal. People interpret departure as judgment, evolution as criticism, and self-preservation as rejection. They feel uneasy when someone they once influenced or guided suddenly seems untouchable, untethered, or self-directed. They don't realize that you aren't abandoning them. You're simply refusing to shrink yourself to fit a version of life that no longer serves your development. You outgrow without drama, without fanfare, and without malice. That subtlety is unsettling. Outgrowing someone also means setting boundaries that others fail to notice until they collide with them. You don't need to explain your evolution. Your actions, decisions, and priorities speak for themselves. This independence doesn't require confrontation because it's built on self-awareness, not rebellion. People notice the shift before they understand the reasoning behind it, and that unspoken distance commands respect, even if it makes others uncomfortable. This approach extends to networks, friendships, partnerships, and professional environments. You learn quickly who fuels growth and who holds you back. The decision to move forward without apology isn't reactive, it's intentional. You carry lessons from the past without being tethered to them. You respect, you acknowledge, and you evolve. You can respect someone and still outgrow them because respect doesn't bind you. It doesn't require compromise of purpose or vision. It's a recognition of value, not a requirement for stagnation. And in that balance between acknowledgement and independence, you reveal a rare, subtle kind of power, the ability to rise without diminishing anyone else, and the courage to leave behind what no longer serves you without regret. Number 8, you know when someone is manipulating you, and you let them think it's working. Most people react immediately when they sense manipulation. They argue, expose the tactic, or confront the person head-on. That makes them predictable, emotional, and easy to read. You operate differently. You can sense when someone is trying to bend reality, test your boundaries, or steer you for their benefit. And you do something far more effective. You let it happen on the surface. Not because you're naive or passive, but because observation is more powerful than confrontation. By allowing the illusion to unfold, you gain insight into intent, character, and strategy. Every manipulative word, every carefully crafted gesture, and every attempt to provoke or confuse becomes data for you. While the other person believes they are in control, you are quietly mapping their patterns, testing the limits of their audacity, and assessing their resilience under pressure. You don't need to expose the game immediately because the game is revealing itself without effort. This creates a subtle tension. People feel clever, confident, and in control, while you remain calm, detached, and unreadable. That disconnect is unsettling for anyone who thrives on manipulation, because their advantage disappears the moment they realize it has been anticipated all along. By the time you decide to act, the landscape is fully understood, and the person trying to manipulate you is already operating at a disadvantage they can't yet see. You also understand timing. Confronting manipulation too early can backfire. It can create resistance, defensiveness, or chaos. Waiting lets you choose the moment when your response will have maximum impact, turning the tables without unnecessary conflict. You turn patience into power, restraint into insight, and observation into strategy. The brilliance of this approach lies in subtlety. You are aware, informed, and unshaken, while the manipulator unknowingly exposes their own limits and weaknesses. Letting them believe they are working the situation is not deception, it's intelligence in motion. You don't just survive manipulation, you transform it into knowledge, leverage, and advantage. And when the moment to act arrives, it's quiet, precise, and irreversible. Number 9, you understand that intelligence isn't kindness, but it can wear it. Most people equate intelligence with charm, friendliness, or being agreeable. They think that the smartest person in the room has to be likable, warm, or soft-spoken. You operate on a different wavelength. You understand that intelligence is not inherently kind. It doesn't owe anyone comfort, validation, or emotional reassurance. But you also know that intelligence can adopt kindness as a tool, a cloak, and a signal, without compromising its clarity, precision, or edge. Kindness, when worn intentionally, becomes subtle power. It allows you to operate in spaces where brute intellect alone would provoke resistance or fear. People let their guard down around you, believing they're interacting with warmth or empathy, when in reality, they are moving in a space defined by your awareness and control. They talk, act, and expose their patterns, all while thinking the interaction is casual or safe. Your kindness is not naive, it's strategic. It disarms without diminishing your insight. At the same time, you never mistake kindness for weakness. You're aware of boundaries, motives, and leverage. You can offer respect without surrender, civility without compromise, and patience without passivity. People often misread your polite demeanor as softness, but they quickly learn that beneath it lies a mind that observes, analyzes, and anticipates with precision. That duality, approachable yet untouchable, creates a tension that makes your presence memorable, disarming, and quietly commanding. This balance also gives you freedom. You can navigate complex social dynamics without conflict, influence outcomes without aggression, and maintain relationships without sacrificing principles. Intelligence cloaked in kindness becomes a silent force. It lets you operate, observe, and guide events while others are distracted by the surface of interaction rather than the depth of your perception. You understand that being smart isn't about being liked, but knowing how to wear kindness when it serves you, subtle, deliberate, and unwavering, elevates your intelligence from mere cognition to a quietly formidable presence that people remember long after the conversation ends. Number 10, you don't chase control, you design outcomes. Most people confuse control with influence. They think being in charge means dominating the conversation, asserting authority, or reacting to every situation that arises. That's a reactive approach, loud and exhausting, and it rarely produces lasting results. You operate differently. You don't chase control because you understand it's temporary, fragile, and visible. What you pursue instead is the design of outcomes, the ability to shape environments, decisions, and circumstances so that the result you want unfolds naturally without overt force. Designing outcomes requires foresight and subtlety. You notice how people interact, what motivates their choices, and what triggers shift behavior. You don't rely on convincing, persuading, or arguing at every turn. Instead, you manipulate variables silently, timing, framing, context, incentives, so that the desired effect happens as if it were inevitable. People rarely notice your hand in it because you don't make the process about you. That invisibility is your leverage. It's far more effective to let the world think events unfold organically while you quietly orchestrate them from behind the scenes. This skill also makes you patient in the face of chaos. Where others panic or act impulsively, you observe, calculate, and nudge. Small, deliberate actions compound into outcomes that appear effortless. While people around you scramble, you're quietly ensuring that the direction you want is set and that obstacles are minimized before they even manifest. People often misinterpret this as luck, timing, or coincidence. They fail to realize the depth of observation, calculation, and intentionality behind every step. By designing outcomes rather than chasing control, you avoid unnecessary conflict, conserve energy, and maintain the upper hand without drama. You don't need to dominate situations to succeed. You need to understand them, influence the variables, and let the system itself carry your intentions forward. That quiet mastery, invisible yet undeniable, is what makes you not just effective but formidable. While others fight for temporary control, you're creating results that last. Number 11. You're comfortable being misunderstood in the short term. Most people fear misunderstanding. They rush to clarify, justify, or defend themselves at the first sign that someone misinterprets their words or actions. That urgency often creates confusion, conflict, or unwanted attention. You operate differently. You understand that being misunderstood is not a failure. It's a tool. It gives you space to observe, to move, and to let outcomes reveal themselves over time without interference. When people misread you, they reveal themselves. Their assumptions, biases, and expectations become visible, often in ways they aren't even aware of. They act, speak, or adjust based on what they think they know about you, and in that misalignment lies your advantage. By remaining patient and measured, you allow the environment and the people within it to show their true colors while you quietly retain clarity about your own intentions. This patience also communicates quiet confidence. You don't scramble to explain yourself because you don't need validation from fleeting perceptions. You know that true understanding takes time and that results, actions, and consistency speak louder than words ever could. Others, desperate for immediate comprehension, often misjudge your composure for indifference or even weakness, while in reality, you are fully aware and fully in control. Being comfortable with short-term misunderstanding also gives you flexibility. You can act in ways others don't anticipate because they are reacting to an inaccurate picture of you. Their misperception becomes a space you can navigate strategically, adjusting without resistance and influencing situations in ways that seem natural rather than forced. Ultimately, embracing misunderstanding is a demonstration of long-term intelligence. It's a refusal to let the trivial need for approval dictate your behavior. You allow time and results to align perception with reality. The patience, restraint, and clarity this creates makes your presence quietly formidable. People only realize your depth once the consequences of underestimating you become undeniable, and by then, the short-term misunderstandings have served their purpose entirely. Number 12, you've accepted that intelligence isolates before it attracts. Most people underestimate the solitude that comes with being genuinely perceptive. While others chase popularity, approval, or constant validation, you understand that true intelligence often requires distance. It isn't loud, flashy, or crowd-pleasing. It observes, calculates, and prioritizes clarity over comfort. That kind of awareness naturally separates you from the majority, and you've come to accept that isolation isn't a punishment. It's part of the process. Being ahead of the curve means walking alone for a while. People around you may not relate to your pace, your standards, or your way of thinking. They may misinterpret your choices as arrogance, aloofness, or disinterest, when in reality, you're simply operating on a level that most aren't equipped to comprehend. That early isolation isn't a gap in your social skills. It's a space for growth, reflection, and strategy. It's the period where you sharpen your mind, refine your understanding, and position yourself in ways that the crowd simply cannot follow. This solitude also acts as a filter. By not conforming, you naturally attract the people who match your level of awareness, ambition, or insight. The ones who remain are those who see beyond surface-level interaction and understand substance, not spectacle. You don't need to work to be recognized by these people. Your depth speaks for itself, quietly drawing the right attention while leaving the rest behind. Isolation before attraction also teaches patience and self-reliance. You learn to trust your judgment, your perception, and your instincts without being swayed by opinion, noise, or fleeting trends. That inner confidence becomes magnetic in its own right. People eventually notice when someone isn't merely following patterns but creating them. You've accepted that intelligence isolates before it attracts because you know the truth. What is misunderstood early on becomes respected later. The quiet patience, focus, and self-possession that come with walking alone eventually position you in a league where influence is effortless. Recognition is earned, and your presence commands attention without needing to seek it. Number 13. You don't need dominance to feel powerful. Most people confuse power with control, volume, or the ability to push others around. They measure influence by how much attention they command, how loud their voice is, or how quickly people comply with their demands. You see it differently. You understand that real power isn't about asserting yourself over others. It's about creating optionality, maintaining autonomy, and having the freedom to act without dependence on anyone else's approval. That independence is quiet, internal, and far more resilient than superficial dominance. Because you don't need to prove yourself, you operate in a way that feels effortless to others, but deliberate to you. You make decisions based on strategy, clarity, and long-term vision, not immediate validation. People who thrive on dominance often misread your calm as passivity, but in reality, you've already positioned yourself ahead of them in ways they can't yet see. Your power doesn't scream. It radiates through precision, foresight, and self-possession. This also means you can influence without confrontation. While others expend energy forcing compliance or commanding attention, you create circumstances where outcomes naturally align with your intentions. You can walk away from a situation without loss, because your power doesn't come from holding others. It comes from holding yourself and understanding the environment. That freedom is disarming to those who equate authority with aggression or control, because it highlights their reliance on external validation. You also don't fear being underestimated. People often mistake your restraint for weakness, your patience for indecision, or your observation for detachment. But you know that power isn't demonstrated through immediate reaction or visible dominance. It's proven over time through consistent results, clarity of thought, and the ability to remain unshaken while chaos swirls around you. You don't need dominance to feel powerful, because power, in its truest form, is internal. It's autonomy, foresight, and resilience compressed into quiet confidence. And the most unsettling aspect for others is that you possess all of this without demanding recognition, attention, or obedience. Your strength is undeniable precisely because it doesn't need to be broadcast. Number 14. You're dangerous because you don't need to prove you are. Most people feel compelled to prove themselves constantly. They announce their intelligence, flaunt their achievements, or push to be recognized in every room they enter. That need to validate themselves makes them loud, predictable, and ironically easy to manage. You operate on a completely different wavelength. You don't need recognition, approval, or validation, because your awareness, strategy, and capability exist independently of anyone else's perception. That alone makes you quietly formidable. When you act, it's deliberate, not performative. You don't rush to assert dominance, impress, or control the narrative because your value doesn't hinge on perception. People around you often misread your calmness for disinterest or weakness. But the truth is, you are fully aware, observing, calculating, and positioning yourself several moves ahead. By the time others realize your capacity, it's too late. You've already shaped the situation, influenced the outcome, and left a subtle impression that lingers long after the moment passes. This absence of need creates an unshakable confidence. You're not distracted by ego, envy, or the urge to compete for attention. You act when it matters, speak when it counts, and remain silent when silence is stronger. That makes your presence unpredictable, and unpredictability is inherently powerful. People can't anticipate your moves because they assume you're performing like everyone else, when in reality, you're operating according to your own rules, standards, and timing. Being dangerous without proving it also allows you to observe and understand others more deeply. Those who feel the constant need to demonstrate power reveal their weaknesses, biases, and patterns. You don't fall into that trap. You let the world underestimate you while quietly gathering insight, influence, and leverage. You're dangerous because you don't need to prove you are. You don't need to announce skill, intelligence, or dominance. You exist, you act, and you influence, subtly, deliberately, and irreversibly. By the time anyone realizes the weight of your presence, the moment has already passed, and the consequences of underestimating you have quietly, inevitably unfolded. The truth about being dangerously intelligent isn't in loud declarations, flashy displays, or constant validation. It's in the quiet awareness, the patience, the strategy, and the restraint that others rarely notice until it's too late. It's in understanding systems rather than people, seeing leverage where others see emotion, and designing outcomes instead of chasing control. It's about observing, calculating, and moving with precision while the world assumes you're passive, silent, or underestimated. Every step you take, every word you withhold, and every pause you allow carries weight that most people can't even sense. You outgrow situations without apology. You let manipulators reveal themselves, and you embrace being misunderstood because short-term perception doesn't define long-term influence. You adapt silently, act deliberately, and wear kindness without losing the edge of intelligence. You don't need dominance to feel power, and you don't need to prove anything because your presence alone carries authority. The combination of foresight, restraint, and subtle influence makes you formidable in ways that are invisible until the impact is undeniable. This is not about intimidation. It's about mastery, awareness, and the ability to navigate life on your own terms. It's about moving through the world quietly, decisively, and unapologetically, while others scramble to react to the results you've already orchestrated. The whisper about you, the recognition that you're not to be played with, exists because you operate from a place of understanding and deliberate action, not performance. If this perspective resonated with you, make sure you subscribe to the channel for more insights that challenge the ordinary and reveal the extraordinary. Don't forget to like, comment, and share this video so others can discover the power of quiet intelligence and subtle influence too. Your awareness starts with a single choice, and the ripple effect is unstoppable. Stay blessed always.